Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us and welcome to a Mulberry Talent Partners Leadership Conversation. My name is Leah Pons and I am the Talent Acquisition Specialist here at Mulberry. We are a full-service staffing and recruiting agency headquartered in Portland, Oregon, with an office in the Silicon Valley. We specialize in the professional placement of human resources, professional and financial office, payroll, and operations positions with direct hire, temp to hire, and temporary opportunities. So let's dive into today's introductions. Today, we are joined by our founder, Lauren Francis, and Alex Newman of Boon Health. Boon Health is focused on making personal and professional development and mental well-being in the workplace more approachable and accessible to all. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Alex and Lauren.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you and so glad you've all joined us today. And we are very happy to have Alex from Boon here today. And Alex and I met at an HR conference a few months ago, earlier in the fall, and we struck up a conversation around the work that Boon does. And it was fascinating to me, and I was very interested. So we got together and talked about bringing Boon forward and to our audience so that people could get a sense of what Boon does and why it's just such an important offering. And so, Alex, introduce yourself and tell us about Boon.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Lauren, and thank you for having me today. Like Lauren mentioned, my name's Alex Newman. I'm the Director of Partnerships at Boon Health. We're a personalized coaching platform. So our goal is to help facilitate both personal growth, professional development, and just better overall mental well-being for our customers' employees. And so a little bit about my background. Prior to joining Boon, I came from the tech space. So I worked at LinkedIn and then most recently DocuSign. I think like a lot of people in the last few years, just started feeling burnt out and wasn't necessarily sure that the path that I was on professionally was one that I saw myself staying on. So I left my job. I joke with people, I was part of that great resignation that we keep hearing all about. And in some conversations with Boon's co-founder, who I've known personally for a number of years, really resonated with the mission of the company, the impact that they were having on people. And for me, that was something that I felt was missing in my professional career, was that passion and that connectedness to the mission of the work that I was doing. So stars aligned. I joined the company in January, and it's been amazing and exciting to see how companies are prioritizing resources like Boon for their employees. So really excited to talk a little bit more about that with you today, Lauren.
Yeah. So when organizations sign up, what are they signing up for and what is the benefit to the employees? Because you talked about professional development, mental well-being, and a personalized coach. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's interesting. It can look like a few things. I think generally the way that our customers view Boon is a one-stop shop to support employees in all of those areas that I mentioned. So when we launch with a new company, employees receive a welcome email from Boon where the call to action is to complete a quick welcome survey. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes. It's a chance for Boon to understand some basic demographics about the employee. So things like their age, their role within the business. Of course, we want to understand any topics or areas of improvement that they're looking for support on from a coach. And then based on the information that the employee provides, we'll send them a follow-up email that has 2 hand-selected coaching options. We have a coaching network of over 150 coaches. So we'll pick 2 coaches that we feel match up with where that employee is looking for support. The employee schedules a session through that email and they're off and running. When I say it can look like a few different things, we do have some customers that say, hey, we have mental well-being resources in place for our staff, and we feel like they're very well supported on that side. We would like to flex more of the professional development muscles with Boon and view it more as a professional development resource. We have customers that view it the other way as well. They say, hey, we have an L&D team that has built out a lot of internal programming. We're really looking for mental well-being and personal growth support. But I think that's the beauty of Boon, is like our goal is to really address the intersection between the two. I think so many companies are in this remote hybrid work environment now where the lines of what's personal life and professional life are becoming more blurred than they ever have been. So for most of our customers, they view Boon as a resource that can meet employees right in the middle of those two, just understanding how both of those areas feed off of one another.
No, I love what you just said because it's so true, that blending. We're hearing more and more about the lives of our candidates in terms of what their life is really like, in terms of children and pets and all these other things. And, or let's say they're living with an older adult, one of their family members, and we didn't really hear as much about it. And now it's really part of the conversation. You know, what I also noticed on your website, I was really impressed with when you send the welcome survey, that within 24 to 48 hours, the employee signs up for the service. And I was really impressed with that, because oftentimes it's a thing that's in the background, I'll take care of it, but it seems like it's top of mind for people.
Definitely. And to go back to your earlier point, I think it's interesting. I think historically companies have bucketed professional development over here and mental well-being over here. And it's here's one vendor or here's one resource to address each one separately. I think more and more companies are realizing in order to remain competitive in the talent landscape and in terms of employee development, you really have to acknowledge that those are not separate entities anymore, and they really are coming closer together. And then, yeah, to your point, in terms of the turnaround time, one thing that we heard from a lot of companies early on in our business is mental health support has become in such high demand that even for employees that are looking to take advantage of the more historically prevalent resources like an employee assistance program, for employees that are raising their hand right now, they're being told they have to wait 3 to 6 weeks to engage with a professional. And for a lot of people, that's not sufficient, right? If someone is in a time of need and they feel like they need that support, it's important to make sure they have access to that in a timely manner. So that's part of what we always take stock in when we're thinking about growing our coaching network, is making sure that we always have availability from the coaching perspective, so that as we bring on new customers and ultimately new employees that are going to work with our coaches, they're able to schedule their sessions in a quick, efficient way. So on average, as you said, we're seeing that from the time that someone completes a welcome survey, they're scheduling their first coaching session within 1 to 3 days of doing so. So really quick access to support for those that are interested in participating.
Yeah, and it shows how the demand. And I recently was looking for a psychologist through our health plan, and it was, oh my gosh, all the filters, all the different, it was, and going through the profiles and then trying to find more about their background and how they might be a fit for me. And it took hours. And so this is just what you're talking about is just so refreshing. And, you know, what is the difference between mental health and mental well-being? Because you mentioned mental well-being a couple of times.
Yeah, no, I think it's an important distinction, because mental well-being, really where coaching is focused, or where Boon's coaching is focused, is identifying a challenge or a goal that is ahead of an employee, charting a path forward to how they can reach that goal or overcome that challenge, and then working with your coach to hold you accountable as you follow that plan of action. I think there is some overlap when you think about services like therapy and counseling and being able to provide guidance, but typically therapy, counseling, psychiatry, there's more of an element of backward facing, like evaluating past trauma and how that is contributing to where someone stands today. And so I think coaching has become, as Leah mentioned, a really accessible and approachable way for people to start to talk to someone about day-to-day goals and challenges that they're faced with. But we also understand that there are going to be more clinical needs that arise that are going to fall outside the bounds of coaching. So it's always something that we're cognizant of, and it's something that our coaches are trained to do. If something like that is more clinical in nature surfaces during a coaching conversation, that would be flagged to our chief clinical officer to make sure that we have a plan of action in place for that employee so that they can get the additional support. I think one thing that we pride ourselves in is it's not so long farewell when that happens, right? Like I think so many times if someone is told that they need more support, they're just handed off and passed along to the next one. We really make sure that our coaches work alongside that employee as they're getting that help to make sure that they have that support system that they've already built trust in throughout that coaching partnership.
That's great, because I've experienced that myself, and it's just moving from one to another and it's starting over and you just don't feel like you're getting traction or getting anywhere. I do also like the fact that it's coaching and it talks about, I mean, there's the mental well-being piece, and then there's also the professional development piece, which is in many organizations, it's a desire, but it's often it's tough to get traction and have it maintain its prominence in an organization. And so this is a great, I'm just so fascinated by this model because it's the person and all of their professional life as well, which I find so great. Because I do often will say to people, it would be great for you to work with a career coach. And oftentimes they do blend. A career coach will have those other components in their backgrounds, but now it actually is a thing. It's not just identified by one or the other.
Yeah, and it was an interesting finding for us early on in our business. Two of our co-founders came from the finance world, and the genesis of Boon initially was they were feeling burnt out, stressed, anxious. They didn't feel like the resources that were being presented to them by their employers fit what they were experiencing or the type of support that they were looking for. And so when they started Boon, I really think they viewed it only through that personal lens, that mental well-being lens. But what we started hearing pretty consistently from our early clients is, hey, this has been an amazing resource for me personally. There are so many things going on at work that I wish I could talk to a coach about. Maybe I just got promoted into a new role and I've never been a manager before, or maybe I'm working towards that promotion and here's a skills gap that I've identified that it would be great to talk through. And it was interesting. McKinsey actually just recently released a study on from last April of 21 to April of 22, the most common reasons why employees were quitting their jobs. And you would think compensation, which is very high on the list. You would think things like mental health, mental well-being support, which is also on that list. But the number one cause or the number one reason why employees were leaving their jobs was lack of professional development resources and lack of career advancement opportunities. So I think that's been, as we've evolved as a business, really being cognizant of bringing in coaches that have different backgrounds that can support all of those different areas. So we have ICF accredited life coaches. ICF is the International Coaching Federation. It's considered the gold standard of coaching. But we've also gone out and found master's level therapists, master's level social workers that have transitioned into coaching. We found that's a really nice fit for employees that are focused on personal growth. But then on the other side, we've brought in executive coaches. Some of our coaches have spent time building out L&D departments at prior companies to make sure that we're able to meet an employee wherever they're at, whether the interest or the need is more personal or professional in nature.
That's great because they bring their professional experience to the table and can add a lot of value to that individual.
Absolutely.
Which is great. When candidates I've been doing this a long time, and the first thing that we'd always be focused on the compensation and the location at the time was so important, obviously, industry and some of those other things, but really it was compensation and the location and is it the right role, that kind of thing. But now the number one thing is fit. It's like fit is first. And the others certainly are important, but not nearly to the degree that fit is. And then, of course, the hybrid model is most desired. And people are also so much more open to having those conversations. And it's top of mind. And it's perceived as part of the conversation. It's not outside of the boundaries or whatever,
Totally.
Which I find to be great.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I mentioned I worked at LinkedIn, and part of those conversations, it was always around how companies can position themselves as an employer of choice. And I think that rang true then, but I think it's more true now than ever, where candidates have choices of where they are going to go work. And one of the things that they want to know is how they can be supported or how they will be supported by that company.
Mm-hmm.
And that means different things, right? Like obviously, as we mentioned, compensation is always going to be a factor, but flexible work environments. And it's funny, I think it's one of those, the grass is always greener on the other side things, where people that are in a fully remote setting kind of wish that they had that opportunity to be back in the office. People that are told that they have to be in office 5 days a week wish that they had the flexibility to work remotely some days. So it's tough for companies to find that perfect balance. But I think that's really moving forward, how companies have to be thinking is the candidate wants to know what type of support they're going to receive, how they're going to develop. And it's a mutually beneficial thing where if you're investing in supporting and developing your staff, that ultimately betters your business and the bottom line as well. So they go hand in hand in making that a successful partnership between employee and employer.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing they're saying is it's the fit, but it's the culture. We're having a conversation coming up next year with one of our leaders that is going to talk about how to interview for fit and how to interview for culture. And so that you can ask these questions and feel good about asking those questions. And so it's so important that people go into a healthy workplace, and that they're looking, also hearing too, is people are looking towards leaders, and they're not just looking on a website and saying, okay, our mission is this or whatever. They're really wanting to probe more into what is that really, how do you see that mission in practice every day in your organization? And so people are getting more comfortable asking those questions, which I really appreciate. That conversation is now available for employers and employees.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we get really excited when we hear is a lot of our customers have started to incorporate Boon, not only from the time that an employee is onboarded, but even in that interview process where, a lot of companies, when they're talking to a candidate, the candidate wants to know answers to some of those things, like you mentioned, of how can I expect to be supported and what does this really look and feel like within your business? And so starting to create awareness around the benefit of Boon, that they have the ability to start working with a coach. And I think especially early on, as someone is onboarding and they're still building that trust and that relationship with their direct manager, especially if they are remote, right? Like you said, it can be challenging for people, especially if you're joining a company for the first time in a remote setting where you don't have that connectivity. You can't just tap the person on the shoulder next to you with a quick question. It's easy at times to feel isolated and like you're on your own little island. And so knowing that one of the resources or benefits that you would have access to is a coach that can help support you through that, both on a personal and professional level, has really become a differentiator in the hiring process for a lot of Boon's customers, as a way that they can walk the walk rather than just talk the talk of how they support their people.
It's also a partnership too, because a lot of these human resource departments have really grown a lot in the past 50 years and evolved and so on. And there's a lot more going on in human resource departments than there ever was before. The corporations can't do everything. They want to have the infrastructure to take care of all of these things. And so to have a partnership like Boon, I think would be incredibly valuable to organizations. I can see that could be invaluable for our employees. We're a company of 7 people. What is the size companies that you work with, the kind of smallest size, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, I would say our sweet spot is probably in like the 100 to 1,000 employee group. We do have a number of customers that fall below 100 employees. We also have a number of customers that are above 1,000, but we've just really found that the small and medium-sized companies out there have wanted resources like this for a while. And for any resources that might be viewed as comparable to Boon, they've historically been cost prohibitive, right? When you hear of coaching in a business, probably the first place that most people's minds would go would be executive coaching, which is a pretty exclusive group of people that are going to have access and ultimately reap the benefits of a service like that. So with our goal of democratizing coaching and making it accessible to all, we've really found that SMB and mid-market category as an underserved area that has really been hungry for a benefit or a resource like Boon.
So the Boon founders they're not medical professionals. Is that right?
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, they will not be the ones providing the coaching, nor will I.
But I think it's just, could you tell the story again about how Boon became Boon?
Yeah, so 2 of our co-founders both came from finance, private equity, wealth management, and as the maybe stereotype of those industries go, it's a high pressure, high stress, long hour work environment. And both of them, after doing that for a number of years, really started to feel the burnout of that. And so our CEO was introduced to coaching as he was going through some of that, and had this epiphany, this aha moment of, why don't we have resources like this available to employees, right? Like I think most companies have leaned on something like an employee assistance program, which for better or worse, I think most employees have seen that marketed as more of like crisis management, crisis response resource. And he didn't really feel like that was the fit or the resource that was going to help him work through these moving forward. So he started building Boon, and our other co-founder had a very similar path where he came from private wealth management. He was actually in the process of scaling a real estate startup himself. And the 2 of them started thinking through, like, how can we build a business that would essentially provide the type of support and resources that they both felt like they could have used and would have used as they were experiencing those feelings themselves.
I love the story. And you started in 2019, and your first customer was what did you say, spring of 2020?
Exactly. The business was officially launched in the fall of 19, and we brought on our first customer in the spring of 2020. So we are a pandemic company in that sense, where we are a fully remote team. We're scattered throughout the country. As I mentioned, we have over 150 coaches in our network, and we're constantly adding to that. And I think we haven't talked about the coaches that much today, but I think when people ask like what makes Boon or what makes us different, our coaches are first and foremost. Like, we have a very rigorous vetting process with our chief clinical officer and our CEO. We don't outsource any of that. And we really feel like we have the best in class coaches to be able to provide these services. So I think that's important to make sure that we touch on today, is like, obviously the business is a cool concept and we feel very positively about the impact that we're making, but none of that would be possible without the amazing coaches that we have in our network.
Yeah, I was going to ask a little bit about that. You have 150 coaches. I would imagine that you would be on track to need to hire more.
We are always doing that. And I think that's one of the really exciting things for us is our coaches, a lot of them have their own private practices outside of Boon, and we're a way to supplement their schedule. Some of our coaches, as I mentioned, still hold jobs at other companies working in their L&D department or their human resources department. And then coaching is a side gig where they just enjoy the opportunity to work with and support people. But so in that, we've really created this close-knit community of coaches where we hold monthly like deep dives, we call them, where one coach will lead a topic each month. And it's just an opportunity to bring everyone together. It's a continuing education opportunity for all. And because of that, we've seen really strong brand recognition and word of mouth within the coaching community. So at times we've even had to like turn the spigot off, if you will, of hiring, because we have so many coaches that are approaching us, and we just want to make sure that we're doing best by them and also making sure that we're maintaining the caliber of coach that we expect to be able to provide to our clients.
And they're all over the country.
All over the country. We have a few international as well. We actually have a few customers with international employee populations. And so we're able to support, I think at our last count, we have had coaching sessions scheduled across 35 different time zones. So it's a resource that is designed to support people irregardless of location.
So interesting. There are blessings of the pandemic for sure. And I think Boon is certainly one of them, just because you think about how everything evolved. It was just this really intersection of what was needed and the creation of the organization. And so in terms of how do you know that the employees are being supported and it's making a difference for the employee population and the organization itself?
Yeah, so we meet with our customers on a monthly basis where we provide monthly reports, and it starts with kind of basic, like high level utilization statistics so that they understand how employees are engaging in terms of the number of sessions that they're completing, second session rate. So are they coming back to work with their coach? But part of that process is we send out feedback surveys after every other coaching session that an employee goes through, where we measure things like client satisfaction. We have across our customer base an average of 95% client satisfaction, which to me speaks to the caliber of coaches and the experience that they're providing for clients. And that's really one of the exciting things for me is in my sales career, I've always been in new business acquisition where I've signed a company up, I've passed them off to an account manager and wiped my hands clean and moved on to the next. With this, I've had the opportunity to meet with our customers on an ongoing basis and really hear firsthand from them, like outside of the feedback results that we're sharing, really hearing anecdotal feedback from, I actually just got off a reporting call before this, and they mentioned that they were meeting with their CEO, and their CEO said, I think Boon might be the most impactful resource or benefit that we have ever invested in as a company, because they hear firsthand, like you mentioned earlier, people are openly starting to feel more comfortable talking about mental well-being and some of these types of conversations. But we really hear from our customers that there's a virality to Boon once it starts to get going in their business, where people will come to a one-on-one or a team meeting and openly talk about the topic that they work through with their coach and the things that they learn from it. We had one of our customers mention that they had an employee lead a company-wide training on a topic that they covered individually with their Boon coach. So it's really been amazing to see, outside of, to answer your question directly, the feedback surveys that we gather from clients, the anecdotal firsthand feedback that we're hearing directly from them as well.
God, it's just so positive. But I also, speaking of positive, your title is Director of Partnerships, which, is there some component to your the work that you do is sales. And sales is a dirty word. Nobody likes to use that, but director of partnerships, is that, I haven't heard that before. I really like it. Is this something that you guys created, or?
Yeah, no, I think, first of all, to your point, I think there's still some stigma around sales. So we were trying to get creative with that one.
Yeah.
But I think that I view my role in a couple of ways, where obviously I'm always looking to connect with new businesses that are looking to evaluate Boon as a vendor for their workforce. But I think part of it is we understand that there's other ways that we can partner with organizations to spread Boon in a broader lens. And so an example of that, really the way that we were connected, is through a mutual connection with a benefit broker. And so starting to think about how we can partner with benefit brokers and other people that really have the pulse on the needs and the wants of different companies across different industries, and being able to partner with them as a potential distribution channel to get Boon coaching, make it more accessible to more people.
Absolutely. Where did the name Boon come from?
Boon, I get this one a lot. I always get, is that the last name of a co-founder? So Boon, the definition of Boon is to benefit something. So Boon Health, we want to benefit health. We want to benefit people's mental well-being, benefit personal growth, professional development. That's how it originated.
I know I'm switching gears a few here and there, but you'd mentioned that the coaches are not licensed therapists. They are coaches, and they have a variety of different backgrounds that they bring. And then also if someone is working with a coach and it's not a good fit, they can easily make that change as well.
Exactly. So to answer the first question, so we do have licensed therapists and licensed social workers. So some of them are still actively practicing, but when they put their Boon hat on, it is all the coaching framework, coaching methodology. And then in terms of when an employee signs up to work with a coach, if we send them 2 coaching options and for whatever reason, the options don't feel like a great fit, or maybe they start working with a coach and things aren't clicking, we always make it very easy for employees to request new coaching options. We'll sometimes even ask if there's like a lived experience or something else that we were missing, just to make sure we get it right the second time. But I can even speak firsthand. I work with one of our coaches, and I think probably the most important driver of long-term success in a coaching relationship is that trust and that comfort level that someone has with the coach that they're working with. So we always want to make sure, even if we don't get it right the first time, that we find a coach that employee feels comfortable working with.
That's great. So we were talking earlier, your dad's a pediatric surgeon, so he's in healthcare. My daughter's in medical school, and she's considering a couple of different areas, and one of them is psychiatry, and there's a few others, and that wouldn't necessarily be, there is more of a uptick in medical schools for that area of focus for medical students. And I think a lot of it has to do with what we're talking about.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I actually last month went to a conference in Iowa where it was a number of different nursing associations coming together to think about the future of nursing. And one thing that we were consistently hearing across that, and I think this is transferable or relevant to all healthcare professions, is, as we all know, the last few years have really put a strain on the healthcare industry. And I think there was probably a lot of unserved needs in that industry even before the pandemic. But I think a lot of these organizations, whether it's hospital systems or even just at these association levels that I was meeting with last month, are realizing that we need to be supporting these people, and especially as they're going through medical school, right? Like, I think the first thought or the first goal is to support those that are already in the healthcare system, which of course is a significant priority, but a lot of times it misses those people that are balancing the demands of being a healthcare professional as well as the demands of being a student and the hours and the time that goes into that. So I think that's an interesting point too, is that that's really a priority for us, is thinking like, how can we continue to support those that are really devoting their career to providing support to others.
Oh, I love that. That's great. I'll be sure to let Caroline know.
Absolutely.
So do you have anything to add before we close up our session and our time today about the organization? Or
no, I think we covered a lot of it. I think I'll give my shameless plug that if anyone listening is interested in learning more, I welcome the opportunity to connect. But no, I think this has been awesome. And I, again, appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. We're so happy to have you and so glad we met. and put this together.
Thank you, Alex and Lauren, for a fantastic discussion. To wrap up on this slide, you'll find ways to connect with all three of us. And lastly, if you found today's conversation insightful, I encourage you to go to our website at mulberrytalent.com to see previously recorded leadership and career conversations and to view our full suite of service offerings. This was our last Mulberry conversation of 2022. We recommend that you follow us online to hear about all of our 2023 conversations. Have a great day, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you in 2023.
And Alex, thank you so much for joining us. It was just a pleasure. And for everyone, Alex's email is on the slide here. And if any of you want to reach out to me so I can connect you to Alice, happy to do. And happy holidays to everyone. Great new year. And we thank you so much for joining Mulberry today and the opportunity to meet Alex.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.